Now we've got writer and podcast host of The Bulwark, Tim Miller. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, brother. Good to be back with you.
Thanks. Let's jump right into the Trump of it all here to start. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way first. Yeah. So there's this prevailing notion here that Trump's indictments are going to be making him stronger by virtue of like buttressing this idea that he's a martyr. And so him being indicted, him being possibly convicted is going to ultimately redound to his benefit, right? You're in that whole quasi-Republican world. I don't not too deep into that world anymore, but you obviously host a show where there's a lot of former Republicans. You work with Sarah Longwell, who runs focus groups at The Bulwark.
Yep.
In reality, is there any evidence to suggest that Trump being indicted, Trump possibly being a convicted felon, would in any way actually help him when it comes to the general election?
Oh, the general election? No, I certainly don't think so. But he's got to get to the general election first, right? And I do think that this is based on the idea that in the primary we've seen, particularly that Bragg indictment, a lot of people rallied to their man. It's the whole stand by your man effect, and I think that there was a little bit of that following the Bragg indictment, and then. But
that was the Bragg indictment. I feel like is different from the DOJ indictment and the possible Fulton County indictment.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think that the Republican, but Trump's bump within the Republican primary voters happened after the Bragg indictment, though. And that then coincides with DeSantis having his failure to launch, with Elon. And so now the question is, do these additional indictments hurt him with the big middle of the Republican primary? So this is the group that matters, right? There's the 35% that are in a cult. There's 15% that are going to be with Mike Pence or Tim Scott or whoever, somebody else. Some of them are with DeSantis. And then there's the big middle, 50%. They liked Trump. They thought he was a good president, but they aren't sure if they want to stick with him. Will these additional indictments move those people? So far, they haven't. So I think that right now there's reason to believe that Trump could easily still become the nominee in spite of being, in trial. Now, does this help him in a general election? Are you insane? He might have to be in court. You can't campaign when you're a criminal defendant. I mean, there's some logistical elements to this that will hurt, right? And then we just lived through the midterms, where across the country, the most insane pro-insurrection, pro-coup Republicans were rejected. I was in Arizona a bunch for the circus. We saw this with Kari Lake and Blake Masters. You saw it with Herschel Walker, Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, right? These people were punished for their association with Trump's anti-democratic actions. There's no reason to believe those same voters will then want to be for Trump in the face of additional criminal, activity even since the midterm. So I don't think it helps him in the general at all.
So, I mean, is the primary that much in doubt on Trump's behalf that he has to lean into this whole martyrdom thing with these indictments? Shouldn't he be? I mean, he's polling 30 points ahead of his closest rival. And granted, we've called races for Hillary Clinton that didn't pan out that way. But is the primary that much in doubt that he has to lean into the martyrdom of it all?
I think that Trump acts like a savage beast. He's an animal who acts instinctively. And if he feels that he's being persecuted, he is going to lash out, right? And I don't think you can always put strategic motives behind him. And look, here's one thing that just happened this week. The governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, is neutral in the primary between him and DeSantis, which is kind of crazy because she's much more of a DeSantis type of a person, or even more of a Tim Scott type of person, but she stayed neutral. Trump starts attacking her as an idiot and like a buffoon, and he's sending out bleats on his social media account about how horrible she is now. No political consultant would ever say to a candidate, attack the governor of the first caucus state who's neutral. She doesn't even oppose you. Viciously attack her. But he can't help himself. It's I know that she's not for me. Oh, she's against me. I'm going to attack him. And I think he was the same way, with Bragg. He's just going to be the same way with Jack Smith, with random people on these grand juries are going to get attacked. I obviously find this despicable and gross, but I just think that when you're trying to get inside his warped mind, trying to project strategic,
long-term strategizing
is stupid. He's not looking at the poll numbers and before he decides what he's going to fart out on his social media account.
Chris Christie has been going full bore at Trump, obviously. Do you think that's going to have any discernible impact on him, or is this just Christie basically placating some grudge for Trump trying to kill him a couple years back?
So I have two thoughts about this, and they're a little bit in conflict. One, I've been begging for somebody to do this, in the Republican Party. Just say the truth. You don't have to be gratuitous. Just deliver the tough attacks on Trump that he fucking deserves. Chris Christie's finally doing it. But then it's like, but it's Chris Christie. And Chris Christie was the reason, one of the main reasons Trump got nominated. He attacked Marco instead of Trump in the last primary. It kind of
shows this isn't some long-standing principle thing for him. It's just a grudge because Trump gave him COVID and nearly killed him. And the first thing he asked was hey, you're not going to tell anybody about this, right?
Yeah. And so, look, I'm happy that he's out there doing it. I'm particularly happy when he's on Fox doing it because, viewers need to hear this stuff. Maybe it'll seep through the blood-brain barrier of some of the viewers, and that'd be good.
And just to be clear, I have turned off the Wi-Fi here, so there won't be any seepage.
I'm really nervous about that. I actually had asked for you to approve that before I came into the studio.
It was on your rider, that's right.
But here's the thing that really worries me. If you want to get into the dorky politics of Christie really quick. So I worked for John Huntsman in 12 and Jeb in 16, and then I want to lump Kasich in there, who I didn't work for, but is kind of in that mold, right? This moderate Republican. Huntsman in 12 got I think 16 or 17 in New Hampshire. Kasich got 15 or 16. Jeb, we got down to single digits. So if you look at a place like New Hampshire, there's about 1/5 of the Republican primary electorate is there for someone like Christie.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: it's only 1/5. Christie's not going to do any better than we did. So he's going to end up in the teens, and he's taking that vote away from somebody who could conceivably beat Trump. So in a weird way, Christie being in is kind of harming the chances that someone else could actually beat Trump in New Hampshire that might have a broader base of support than him. So anyway, I don't know. I like what he's doing, but I don't think that in the end it's going to be for much of anything except maybe a distant second in New Hampshire is the best case scenario. And then what?
Do you think that, this is the ultimate question, but do you think that there is any room for an anti-Trump candidate in the Republican Party right now?
No. The anti-Trump group is about 15%, right? And if you just look at the top three people. I was early on this. I was like, if there's anybody in this field, maybe someone new will come in, but in this field, if there's anybody besides Trump or DeSantis who has a chance, it's Vivek. Because what the voters want in the Republican Party right now is MAGA. Yeah. And they want somebody that smells MAGA, that sounds MAGA, that is not one of those old-timey Bush bulwark people, right? They don't want anybody who even has the scent of that on them. Okay, so here we are right now today. Trump's around 50, DeSantis is around 20, Vivek's around 10. He's now cleared the former vice president, Mike Pence, in multiple polls, okay?
Yeah.
So that's 75-80% of the primary wants Trump, DeSantis, or Vivek.
Yeah.
That's the party.
Which is just some iteration of Trump, maybe Trump himself or Trump without the legal baggage.
Yeah, Trump imitator without the legal baggage who's younger, right? Yeah. That's it. That's 80% of the party. So 15 or 20% want somebody else. 20 is the absolute max. And it's just these guys can't wake up to the reality. And so now, just this weekend, it's Pence, Scott, and Nikki are all going to Iowa to go to an event with Tucker where it's the crowd's throwing tomatoes at them. Yeah. Tucker's making fun of them for being pro-Ukraine. They haven't accepted the reality of what has happened to the Republican Party. And my big message is to all of my old friends in the Republican Party is wake up to the reality. It's not what you wish it would be. It's not what you want it to be.
Yeah.
The party is what it is. And the voters want MAGA nonsense.
But there has to be some degree of being able to see more than 5 inches in front of your face and recognizing what happened, to your point, in 2022, recognizing what happened to Trump in 2020, recognizing what happened to the Republicans in midterms in 2018. Doesn't your former party recognize that MAGA might work within the base, but to get to that point where you actually have to win the primary, you are making yourself radioactive in the general? Or is it just we're in an era of no compromising, total polarization, and it just you just win or and you don't compromise at all?
Well, So the answer is twofold. At the top, like the strategists class, they recognize it.
Of course.
But they're scared of the
Yeah.
voters, right?
Yeah.
And they're still trying to get their cuts on their TV buys so they can buy their beach houses, right? And so, they don't want to go out and say the truth, because as soon as you do, then you get branded a rhino, never Trumper, and you don't get work anymore, okay?
Yeah.
So the smart people recognize this, but can't do anything about it. The voters don't recognize it. And here's why. Because in 2015 and 16, a bunch of people like me and the Republican strategist class said to the voters, ran ads, you can't support Trump in this primary because he can't win. Hillary will beat him. I said Hillary would beat him from jail. Thought I was being cheeky. Wrong. So these people...
Turns out you were just a few years too early on that one.
Yeah, exactly. So these people all looked at the supposedly smart establishment class that they had kind of grown to resent anyway. And they're like, you guys told us he couldn't win. You were wrong. We were right. He won.
Yeah.
And now you go ahead to 2020, and most of them believe that it was fraud. So you can't go to them with logic and say this isn't working, because they would say back to you, no, we won in 16, we won in 20, and the deep state stole it from us.
Right.
So why would we go a different direction?
Yeah. I guess that's like, this is an instance where the Republicans' own big lie is actually coming out to hurt them in the end, their own party in the end. I mean, it's not, Democrats aren't hurt by it. It's the Republicans who are basically screwing themselves.
For sure. Absolutely.
So, DeSantis's poll numbers peaked in about December of 2022, and they've continued to plunge since then. If you were advising him, what would you tell him to do differently right now? Other than, of course, not letting anybody know what his voice sounds like.
Yeah, well, that would help. I don't know that I would have announced in an audio medium, if I was Ron DeSantis. You want to play to your strengths, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And his voice isn't his strength. Okay, what would I say to Ron DeSantis? Well, my first cheeky answer is that if you have a critique of Donald Trump, it shouldn't be that he was too nice to gay people. I don't think that's like gonna land with anybody.
And by the way, like who does that work on?
Nobody. That's what I'm
Who's saying
nobody.
like, oh, you know what? DeSantis told me that Trump was like a huge friend to the gays. Now
now I'm moving over to DeSantis. It doesn't work on anybody, so it's just stupid. It doesn't even land with MAGA voters. It feels inauthentic. I always thought that DeSantis had a good elevator pitch that he's gotten away from. And this is, again, I'm not endorsing this because I don't like a lot of his policies in Florida. But just from a strategic standpoint, it was, I gave you all of the MAGA policies that you wanted. The left hated me as much as Trump did, and I did it successfully. Okay, we enacted these policies. I won in huge landslides. He didn't. I like Donald Trump, nice guy. Maybe not a nice guy, funny guy, but he just he wasn't effective at getting the policies enacted when he was president, and then he lost, and you might think he got it stolen from him, but then all that means is he wasn't effective at containing the deep state and coming up with ways to get it right, like coming up with policies of his own to get people to the polls. Like, this is what this is about. We need to win. The left needs to lose. We need to drink their tears. I did that in Florida. Go with me. I always thought that was like maybe an elevator pitch that could work, right? And when he was doing the best in December, it's because of that, right? Voters looked and they're like, man, a lot of these Trump-endorsed candidates lost in the midterms. DeSantis won huge. I think that was a big part of his surge. The problem is, once you get down into the details, like, he's decided to get away from that a little bit and attack Trump from the right on these weird cultural issues. And I just think you get into this little extreme right ghetto of super online,
to your point before, you have that like fashy fear porn, and that's what that anti-LGBT ad was. It was like, it was way deep. Like, you have to be so terminally online to even understand like the references.
The Giga Chad.
Yeah, like
who knows what the Giga Chad is?
Yeah, like maybe 1,000 people.
Right. And by the way, the median Republican primary voter, I don't have the exact numbers on hand, but from like 2016 is about 67 years old and didn't go to college. Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't understand you're super online. I need to be deep on Reddit and 4chan references. So I think that, and the other thing that people don't really understand about the Trump 16 primary is Trump did the best with both the far right voters and the moderate voters, because the far right voters saw him as like, oh, this guy is like a New York moderate, but he's cutting a deal with us, on the judges and on abortion, and I like him, and also
that was the evangelicals.
Yeah, that was the evangelicals deal, right? And so he's like, and he'll be mean to the left. I like him because of that. The moderate voters, they looked at him and they're like, yeah, okay, I've always thought that like some people in the Republican Party were too churchy. Like, imagine in your head, a working class guy that's like doesn't go to church every Sunday, isn't like a hardliner on abortion.
And you see the the porcelain doll that is Mike Pence walk forward.
Yeah, you're like, that's not my guy. Yeah. Like, I don't want somebody, if I accidentally knock somebody up, I don't want somebody telling me what to do about that, right? Like, that guy, they loved Trump. So Trump got from both. So by trying to get to Trump's right on all these cultural stuff, DeSantis is just going straight down Ted Cruz alley. It's just like, and he has Ted Cruz's advisors. So it's like, these guys didn't learn anything. He's running the Ted Cruz campaign over again, and it's fucking crazy. And so unless he changes course, he's just staring down, getting his ass kicked, just like Ted Cruz did, and he'll probably get his wife insulted in the process.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about Joe Biden for a moment. Obviously, Republicans are trying to make Biden's age the preeminent issue in this campaign. I get that that's a point of concern. I don't want to discount that. He would be the oldest president we've ever had. Given that the actual election is a binary choice between two people, it's probably going to be Biden and Trump. Do you think at the end of the day that the issue of Biden's age is going to in any way eclipse the danger of Donald Trump for any of these voters? Like, this is not to suggest that Biden's age isn't an issue, because it is, but like...
It doesn't eclipse it for me at all. It's not even a close call. Donald Trump tried a coup. Could it eclipse it for some voters? Yeah, I think maybe for some. I think that if you look at Biden, what I see is a guy who exceeded all my expectations, really, on getting stuff done, bipartisan bills, infrastructure, chips, you go down the list. But like, from a presentation standpoint, he just looks really old. He does. And I think that there are, when I talk to people that are outside of politics, there are a lot of people that have concerns about this and who are not like MAGA far-right weirdos. And, he just looks old. And so that's something that he's going to have to really work to combat in campaigns, demonstrating vigor on the campaign trail, getting out there more. He has started to do some of this, which I'm happy to see, because it's going to be a more rigorous campaign than 2020 was, since it was during COVID.
Well, I had asked the question about DeSantis, but if you were advising Joe Biden, then what would you tell him to do? I mean, he has different routes that he can go. He can go touting the legislative achievements. He can go pushing back on all the bullshit that's being put forward by Republicans, the Trump of it all. Like, what would you advise him to do? Because you can't do everything. Right?
Yeah, you can't do everything. No, I think that coming from Biden himself, I think that his messaging has been fine, right? It's focusing on, here are the things that we've done. I think he could talk about it more. Here are the things we've done, and literally democracy is a threat on the other side. The threat from Trump is too big, and I think that's a good contrast for him that he should stick with. But presentation wise, I want to see Scranton Joe more, man. I want to see him out there with the people. I like the old picture of him with the lady and the the biker chick on his lap. Like, I want to see biker chicks on his lap. Yeah. I want to see him out there.
Do you think they're keeping him they're keeping him contained too much for fear of making a single gaffe that would just kind of overshadow the coolness of like having that moment with the biker chick?
Maybe that's what they're thinking. But I just, in this day and age, it's a different media environment, right? Like, there's constant stuff churns, man. Like, a gaffe's going to churn through, and I think that they need to have Kamala out there more. I think that my two critiques of the administration right now is, one, somebody else besides Joe Biden needs to be the salesperson for this administration, because Joe Biden has a ton of strengths, and like I said, he's exceeded my expectations across the board. But his strength isn't like, we nailed it on infrastructure, we nailed it on chips, like, we're bringing you the best economy ever. Like, he's not a pat himself on the back guy. He's not a really compelling orator like Obama was. He's not a braggadocious guy like Trump. He doesn't have that. So he needs someone else to do that for him. And it doesn't feel like they've found somebody to do that. So I think that is, getting Biden out there a little bit more and finding someone else to be like really carrying that message. It feels like it should be Kamala. And for some reason, it just doesn't seem like it has been.
Yeah. I want to get into some hot takes here.
Oh, I love that.
All right. So this is everything here, just as a disclaimer, is going to age very poorly.
Oh, okay. My hot takes age pretty good. Yeah. So speak for yourself.
Well, that's how we ended up with President Jeb. And,
no, I took Jeb seriously. I do the best when I'm shooting for the hip. Anyway.
Okay. Who will be the first three Republicans to drop out, and who will be the last three Republicans to drop out of the Republican primary?
Okay. I think that the last three, I'm going to take that first, are going to be Trump, Vivek, and Christie.
Wait, so the last 3 to drop out.
Yeah,
so you're saying
stay.
Trump is? Oh no. So who do you think is going to be
3.
the nominee?
Trump.
Okay, so who are going to be the 3 to drop out? To leave Trump.
You mean the 3 to lose the quickest?
3 to stay in the longest.
Yeah, to try to compete with Trump.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think Christie will just keep fighting down towards the end, and I at this point I see DeSantis fizzling out and falling behind Vivek and Christie.
Okay, so you think the final 4
3.
are going to be Trump, who's going to be the nominee, and then Vivek Ramaswamy, Christie, and DeSantis. Who do you think are going to be the first 3 to go? What would be the shortest-lived campaigns?
I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Pence just cried and dropped out of the race after the Tucker Carlson interview that I just watched a couple hours ago. So I think that. Trying to think about all the people in the field.
I mean, then you've got the Asa Hutchinsons, Will Hurd.
They're barely in there. Nikki's campaign hasn't gone anywhere, but you could see her staying around until South Carolina, I would say.
Burgum
in North Dakota. He's got money.
He's got money, so he can self-finance.
Like, what's the reason for him? What's the reason for him to get out?
I might donate. I heard if you give $1, you get a $20 gift card.
Yeah, get $19. One of our viewers did that and got a letter back that like the card's not going to come for a few weeks. So so if you need money urgently, that is the way to go.
Not a great bridge loan.
Yeah, I would say that Asa, Pence, and Nikki. Okay. I don't see any of them. I think Nikki looks at Tim Scott and sees that he's got more money and a better chance in South Carolina, and I think all of them see that they don't really have a path.
Okay. Next hot take. Who are the general election candidates in 2028?
Oh, man.
We're skipping this full primary.
Yeah.
We're going right to the next general election.
Right.
Skipping both those primaries, too. Who are the final 2?
Yeah. I'm going to give you what I think and what I want for the Democratic side first. I really think it's going to be Kamala. I think it's going to be very challenging to beat her. I know this is kind of a zag take right now. It's like I would think that the vice president would be the next nominee. But for whatever reason, people are very down on her. I just think it's going to be very challenging to beat a black woman in a Democratic primary, and James Carville has a good rule of thumb, which is whoever can win in the black churches in the South is going to be the Democratic nominee, and who's going to beat her down there? I just don't know. I don't see it. I really love Josh Shapiro though, so if things change, I think he's done an awesome job as governor of Pennsylvania already. It's only been a year. What he did with I-95, I think he's great. So anyway, Kamala and Shapiro, maybe that's a ticket. On the Republican side. I think Donald Trump will be the nominee again in 2028. I mean, until somebody else beats him, he could run again. I don't want to trigger your viewers, but he could lose in 2024. There's no rule against not running again. Yeah. So I guess I'll say Kamala against Trump.
I never even considered the prospect of more than a decade of my life being spent on Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that I think Trump's looking good. If not Trump, somebody in like very much in his oeuvre. Like that's where things, and that's my main. Like that's where things are going. J.D. Vance or somebody like that.
So do you think I have one more hot take,
okay.
but do you think that if they've lost in 2018, in 2020, in 2022, and if they lose in 2024, do you not think the spell will be broken? Do you think they're like that they look at Donald Trump and say, what we need after all these losses is more MAGA.
Trump.
Yeah, it's more Trump. Yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking. And I say the spell will be broken as if it's like one of those zombie movies where like the main zombie gets killed and the rest of them snap out of it. I mean, people are people. Your identity is your identity. So I guess it's not that easy to just.
No, it isn't that easy to just drop something, especially when you've tied so much of your life to it. I mean, you've got the hat, you've got the Facebook, you got your friends are associated with it. I'll say this: the party is not going back to what it was. And people might decide that Donald Trump himself has too much baggage at some point. I don't know why they haven't decided it already. But anytime you talk to voters, anytime you listen to a MAGA focus group, anytime on the road, these people hated the old Republican Party. They didn't like the pro-immigration stuff. They didn't like the green eye shade cutting, spending stuff. They don't want us to do anything overseas. They love the culture war. They want some version of MAGA. So even if if they decide that Trump isn't the right person anymore, it will be something in his image. It's not like the party's not coming back to Tim Scott, to any of these guys that just want to, I want to be optimistic and talk about how great America is on the world stage and talk about freedom. Yeah. That's just not what the people want right now.
Okay, last hot take. Does Donald Trump spend a single day in prison?
I've been starting to think about this a lot. I really hope so. I really want it so bad, and I've been trying not to hope. But I've been pretty impressed with Jack Smith.
It doesn't seem like he's fucking around.
It doesn't seem like he's fucking around. So I don't think he spends a day in jail before 2024. Jail isn't going to save us from this election. We got to save ourselves from Donald Trump one more time. But I'm going to do a hot take and just say, yeah, I think he does spend a day in jail, and we'll do a live YouTube champagne toast when that happens.
Yeah. Well, any conservative bona fides you had before this are gone.
They've been burned for a while.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
If you want, we could talk about regulatory policy or something. I can earn some of them back maybe next time.
I'm sure that's what's going to do it. I'm sure all those Republicans are just waiting on regulatory policy. I'm sure that's the last thing that's the bridge that they were hoping you bring them back on. Okay, I want to finish off with some Twitter versus Threads commentary.
Okay.
So I'm wondering which megalomaniacal billionaire you support. Whose team are you on?
Yeah, I guess I'm Zuck. This is like an Iran-Iraq war type situation.
Right.
But here's the thing: we've had to, especially as never-Trumpers, have had to learn that sometimes in life you've got to decide between two shitty options, and you've got to just decide, and you can't just check out, right? And you can say,
said by someone who's worked in politics for a long time,
right? If you've got two meals in front of you, and one of them is a shit sandwich and one of them is a mayo sandwich. I really don't like mayo at all, but I'm gonna suck it up and eat the mayo sandwich. And so I'm going. Zuck is the mayo sandwich in this analogy, and so that's where I'm going. I want to see Elon Musk suffer. And I want to get some joy out of that. And he, he's still going to have a good life because he's a very rich man. But, he's made one of the worst business decisions in history. I mean, he's going to lose 40-something billion on this Twitter deal. And I really hope Zuck and Adam and the people at Meta get Threads good enough that it can really just replace it.
Yeah, I agree with that. To suggest that most of what I do is not fueled by hate and spite would be a lie. So, I've heard criticism that there's concerns that all the libs are going to move to Threads, all the conservatives are going to stay at Twitter, and so our media ecosystem will be even more fractured than it already was. You work in media in a very strange subset of the media, of between both sides anyway. So what's your take on this, on this idea that the media ecosystem will be even more fractured?
Yeah, I guess I'm of the opinion that I'm really worried about this, but don't have a good solution. Because I think that this was already happening, right? I think that there is a really a deep lack of appreciation among a lot of folks for just how thick the MAGA media bubble is. How do you penetrate that? I have no idea. It's not like the old days where people listened to Rush but then got Tom Brokaw at night, right? These people are in a completely self-fulfilling, Earth 2 world. And when you talk to them and ask them where they're getting their information from, the most normal person is Ben Shapiro. You know what I mean? This is they're in a very deep bunker. And so how do you penetrate that bunker? That's one question. I don't know the answer to that. I think that to progressives, to liberals, I would say, don't do that to yourself. You don't need to listen to Steve Bannon's podcast, but try to be intellectually curious. It's healthy for your brain to listen to other things. And I do my best to listen and read things across the board. I punish myself I've got a Candace Owens profile coming out next week. I spent a month listening to Candace's podcast. That's a weird world. But I want to hear what everybody's saying. But I think that is probably going to be an outgrowth of the Threads thing, is a more bifurcation of our social media. But to me, it felt like that was inevitable anyway. And so I don't think that's a reason not to go to Threads.
Yeah, there's also the element of the incentive structure on these platforms is not to reward people who are in any way moderate, right? And so even when you do allow voices from the other side to come in, the voices that come in are Dan Bongino and Seb Gorka and the worst actors because they know how to game the system. And I've said on Threads before too, I'm this is a new platform. Do not allow these people to like rage bait you into replying and quote tweeting and doing like engaging with them in any way, because they know what they're doing and they know how to game the system, and they know that they can, post something like men can't get pregnant and then just sit back and watch as like 10,000 libs angrily prop up their post by replying and quote tweeting it, and so that's what I was hoping for Threads, and to everybody's credit, it does seem like that's actually working out pretty well
so far. Yeah, dude, don't feed the trolls a good policy. Okay, now the next level of challenge from here the first step is don't feed the trolls. The second step is, okay, if somebody of good faith offers something that you disagree with, maybe engage with them in good faith, or ignore it, or don't yell at them and say that they're like a crypto fascist, right? Because like this is the other problem, right? Because you can't have dialogue if the only people, if you're a lib, let's say for short, and you're like the only people who are willing to go on your platform are Dan Bongino trolling you, and then other people who do disagree with you, but they're like, oh man, I might. I'm trying to think of a story recently. I kind of was with Maureen Dowd on the Biden grandchild thing, right? But it's like, am I going to tweet about this? Like, if I tweet about it, then like the people that like me are going to get mad at me, and then people, don't are going to troll me. You know what I mean? And so it would be nice if we could try to cultivate an environment where their disagreement on a few things in a healthy way is also okay. And I do feel like we're losing that a little bit. That worries me.
I don't view, to your point, I don't really view the internet as a place for dialogue anyway. I just kind of see it as like as a messaging platform at this point. I don't think anybody really goes online expecting to have their opinions changed by anybody, expecting to like engage in real dialogue anymore.
Maybe that was wishful thinking, but I mean that we could have a healthy dialogue. But I guess a lower step than that would just be not unnecessarily dunking on people for no good reason.
And we'll see. I mean, I do think that Threads maybe has that. I feel like, Twitter got so toxic that and look, I am not above spending all day dunking on people.
No, me neither. I love a dunk.
But I think that there is something to be said for the possibility of a platform that is just a little less toxic, a little less overtly toxic, where the point of it isn't just like vile mayhem every day. So we'll see if that's what Threads turns into. But let's finish off with this. Tucker's show, his ratings have been going down week over week. I think he's at like almost 90% down from where he first started. And granted, the view count is already wildly distorted. It's just Elon just basically counts any impression as a full view if just someone's scrolling past it on their timeline. But do you think that he ultimately decides to stay on Twitter?
I think so, because there's a little axis of evil thing going on with Elon and Tucker, and it's mutually beneficial. And Elon, despite the fact that he's losing a ton of money on the Twitter deal, still is one of the richest guys in the world.
Still got some cash left.
Yeah, so he can throw the bag at Tucker to help him prop up the platform, and he needs that. He needs a big star to keep people on the platform, because he's not just at risk of losing people to Threads. Trump has his social media. There's still Getter and all these other right-wing ones out there.
But to that exact point, when Tucker is the main star on your platform, then your platform basically devolves into a far-right platform. And when you look at these far-right platforms, the Getters, the OANs, the True Socials, they're not necessarily valuable enterprises, right? So isn't, in a way, he's kind of like doing the like hurting himself, doing the opposite of what he's looking to do by virtue of devaluing the brand to the extent that he is?
Yeah, the big advertisers you don't see flocking to Getter and Parler. Maybe, but I think that that Elon has not literally, but figuratively taken the red pill to like such a degree that I think that he thinks that Tucker is mainstream and is like speaking truth. I really do. I don't think it's an act. I think that Elon is believing his own bullshit and has like gone down this radicalization pipeline. So I don't know that he sees Tucker as that, as extreme as he objectively is. So I don't know. I think to me that seems like the deal that they're gonna cut. And the one thing that he will definitely get with Tucker, not advertisers, is like a significant chunk of the Republican Party and of conservative internet users who see themselves as Tucker-style Republicans. And we spent time earlier talking about how tiny the anti-Trump group is within the Republican Party. The Tucker wing of the party is huge. And Tucker was just slaying, all of these guys who are governors. The vice president, Mike Pence, went up and had to humiliate himself in front of Tucker, because the Republican primary voters like Tucker. They will follow him. They'll watch his platform. And so, maybe that sewer platform will just end up being Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Look over at OAN and Truth Social, Parler, just rolling in it. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Tim, where can we see and hear more from you?
You can hear the Bulwark podcast every day. We have a Next Level podcast at the Bulwark on Wednesdays and Sundays. I'm on Snapchat. I got a Snapchat show, Not My Party. I'm on MSNBC sometimes. I might go on the circus again this fall. That kicks back up in October. So maybe we can hang out together, do maybe we can argue about something next time.
Yeah, perfect.
Bring out my old Republican bona fides.
Tim, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.